no flights at the Royal Geographical Society, Hong Kong. My name is Terry Dillon, a board member of the RGSHK. We are very pleased that our weekly web talks continue to be very popular. Tonight, I also have the great pleasure of announcing the commencement of physical events again. Our gala dinner on the 21st of November at the Hong Kong Club and our first field trip on the 22nd of November, both of which are nearly sold out. There will now be many more physical events again, so please see details on our website and in your email. We look very forward to seeing you there. Coming back to our web talk this evening, I'd like to extend a special welcome to our non-member guests. We hope you will enjoy tonight's event and that we can welcome you as members very soon. On that note, stay tuned for more web talks and surprise events to be announced in the coming weeks. Before we start, a bit of housekeeping. Tonight's event consists of a 45-minute talk followed by a Q&A. We encourage you to ask questions at any point during the talk using the Q&A box at the bottom right of your screen. At the end of the talk, the speaker is going to address your questions orally via our question master, Mike Sherman. If you have any technical issues, please use the chat feature at the bottom left of the Zoom screen so our team can assist you. Our speaker tonight is Thor Peterson. Without further ado, please join me in extending a warm welcome to our speaker tonight.
Thank you very much, Terry. And thank you very much for this opportunity. It's an honor for me to speak at the Royal Geographical Society, Hong Kong. My name is Thor, and I'm an explorer and modern-day adventurer from Denmark. In 2013, I left home on an ambitious mission, and I'm now 9 countries from becoming the first in history to reach every country completely without flying. I set out from home thinking that this would easily be accomplished in less than 4 years. But as we reached October the 10th last month, it became 7 years away from home on my part. And now I'd like to share a little bit about this crazy adventure with all of you. So I'm clearly a bearded man, but that's not what they think of me from back home. I have a silly little rule within this project, and that is I only shave when I see my fiance. And while we still love each other, we haven't been able to meet up for a while, and thus the length of all of this. Yeah, so it's a pleasure being in Hong Kong. It wasn't my choice, it just happened to be so. But I think what I want to do is I'll start by showing you a world map, and then we're going to go a little bit through some of the logistics of how I ended up in Hong Kong. Right, so there you go. This is a Mercator map. These were invented some 500 years ago, and they're not 100% accurate. Some fun things to point out on a map like this is when you take a look at Greenland up there in the top, the big yellow one up here, and you take a look at Algeria, the orange one right here in the top of Africa. Those two are actually supposed to be the same size. But on a map like this, it almost looks like Greenland is the same size as all of Africa. And one of the reasons for that, or the particular reason for that, is that the world is round and this map is flat and square. And everything that's up on the top of the map sort of gets stretched a lot, and the same goes for the bottom, while other things get squashed together a little bit. We decided to put Denmark in the middle of the map. Middle of the world, right there. Another yellow one, so small, so tiny, you almost can't see it. And that's where I was born on December 19, 1978. And on the 10th of October, 2013, I left Denmark and crossed the border into Germany, which is just south of Denmark. And then I was, in a sense, the furthest away from home that I've ever been in my entire life. Because there are 3 main rules for this project. One is I cannot fly at any point whatsoever. Another one is that I must spend more than 24 hours in each country before I can count it as a visit. And the third one is I cannot return home to Denmark unless I quit the project or complete it. So when I crossed the border from Denmark into Germany, in a sense, that was the furthest I've ever been away from home, because now I had the entire world ahead of me. So the plan was to visit Western Europe and Central Europe, and then I circled up north, briefly touched into a little bit of Russia, came across the Nordic countries, and then went over the North Atlantic, eventually coming to North America, then traveling down south through Central America, hitching a ride on a boat into South America, and then going down the west coast of South America, crossing over to the east coast, coming back up north, coming into the top countries in South America, into the Caribbean, visiting all the countries within the Caribbean, including Bahamas, which is not a Caribbean country, that's an Atlantic country, especially when you speak to someone from the Bahamas. Then I got back to the US, and then on board a container ship east over the Atlantic, and came up to Northern Europe into Germany, then quickly hopped on a train, went down to the south of Spain, got on a ferry into Africa. Africa has 54 countries. I thought that would take about a year. I traveled counterclockwise down through Africa, down to the southern tip, then up the eastern side, went into the Indian Ocean, visited the 4 island nations out here, then went all the way up north, eventually coming up to Algeria, bordering Morocco, where I started the journey in Africa. And that took me 2 years and 3 months. So it took me a lot more time than what I thought, but Africa is truly a very, very large continent. And there were also some logistical troubles and bureaucratical troubles within the continent. I'll get back to some of that. Back into Europe, across Europe, into Eastern Europe, visited the Balkan countries, made it to the Middle East. After the Middle East, I went through Caucasus, from Caucasus, through all the stans. There are 7 countries that finish with stan. We have our Pakistan and Kazakhstan and Tajikistan, Turkestan, lots and lots of stans. Stan is a Farsi word that actually means country or land or region, depending on who you speak to. So when you're saying Kazakhstan, you're saying the land or the region of the Kazakhs. When you're saying Pakistan, you say the land of the Pakis. Then I made it across Asia, went through China as well, and eventually I was on my way coming down through Indonesia, and I made it to Papua New Guinea and to East Timor, and I was on the home stretch. I was in the Pacific, and then eventually I made it up to Micronesia. And once I got to Micronesia, I needed to get to Palau, which would have been the next country. And I have some close connections with some shipping companies around the world. And in this case, I have had a lot of help from Swire Shipping within the Pacific and Pacific International Lines, PIL. And it was a PIL vessel. And they said, why don't you just hop on a ship up to Hong Kong? And then you can wait for 4 days and connect with another ship down to Palau. And I thought that sounded like great logistics. So that's what I aimed to do. And I made it to Hong Kong. And this was in the very beginning of the virus outbreak in Wuhan. That was on the 28th of January this year. And then I was told there was going to be a slight delay due to Chinese New Year. I thought, no problem. Hong Kong is amazing. I had a few things I needed to buy. Interesting place. I could do with a few more days in Hong Kong. And then within those extra days, Palau closed their borders. And I've been in Hong Kong ever since. Right. So this project is called Once Upon a Saga. And it can be a little bit difficult to understand exactly what is Once Upon a Saga, or why would anyone go ahead and do a thing like this with their life? Why would they put all the resources into it? Why would they put all the time into it? And especially if there's a lovely woman waiting back home, then why would I still be out here after 7 years? So I'm going to try to explain Once Upon a Saga in 3 different projects underneath the overall project. And the first part, I'll go back to the world map, is certainly the logistics. The logistics on its own would be a full-time job. It takes a lot of time to work out which borders to cross, if you're going with a train or with a bus, which bus company you're going to go with, what about documentation, various visas, which order should you be visiting the countries. If you're going to a country with armed conflict, where can you enter, who can you trust? What about handshakes, language, who can you approach? Do you approach the oldest man in the room, or can you shake hands with a woman? Do you not shake hands at all? All of this stuff. That is the logistics of this project, and it's a lot more work than what I anticipated. There has certainly been a lot of great adventures around the world, and I'm very, very fortunate to have met a great deal of wonderful people, many of who I can call my friends today, but there's a lot of work behind it. Right, so the second part that I will introduce is that I'm traveling as a Goodwill ambassador of the Danish Red Cross. Now here I am. This is a few years ago when I reached Bucharest in Romania. And outside of this photo, everybody was smiling, but we were trying to prove a point that I'm not a target, because unfortunately, a lot of humanitarian workers within the Red Cross, Red Crescent have actually been targeted around the world, and many have actually lost their lives as well. But getting back on point, I'm a Goodwill ambassador of the Danish Red Cross. That means I represent the Danish Red Cross as I go around the world. The Red Cross, Red Crescent, is the world's largest humanitarian organization. It exists in 192 countries around the world. It was founded in 1863 in Switzerland and eventually spread out to nearly every country in the world. So as a Goodwill ambassador, I've been paying a visit to the national societies all around the world. And at this point, I've paid a visit to the Red Cross or Red Crescent in 189 countries. And the aim is to bring some visibility to the humanitarian work, hopefully get people involved in donations or giving some of their time, maybe volunteering, or generally just having people understand how important the work of the movement is, so it gets some support and further recognition around the world. I put a lot of work into that, but I haven't been able to visit any new national societies for a while. I was able to visit with the Hong Kong Red Cross earlier this year, and they're doing a phenomenal job here in Hong Kong. That's something that people in Hong Kong can be very, very proud of. Right, so then moving on to the final part, the final project within the project. This is, by all means, a people project. This is a photo from Sudan, from Khartoum, and several of these people are friends that I'm still in touch with today. But the point is not Sudan. The point is I have reached 192 countries of the targeted 203 countries within this project. So I've basically been to every country in the world. And I've done that on a very, very small budget. I'm traveling around the world on a $20 US per day budget. That's a budget which goes to cover transportation, accommodation, meals, and visas. And that more or less holds up. Some countries are far cheaper than that. Hong Kong is a little bit more expensive, but I'm getting a lot of help and support from many people in Hong Kong, so I'm making do with what I have. I travel without flying. I travel with public transportation. It's basically been public transportation all around the world, with the exception of getting on board some container ships now and again and some fishing boats. And somehow my head is still attached to my body. I don't have any bullet holes. I haven't died from strange diseases. I'm not chained in some dark dungeon somewhere around the world. In reality, while this is by no means a perfect world, it's a lot safer, it's a lot more hospitable, it's a lot more friendly, it's a lot more normal, and to some degree, a lot more mundane than what people, they believe that it is. It's usually the negative news that makes headlines and that we speak about and which we share. But in reality, people are just people. And for a long time, while I was traveling around the world, the one thing that everybody was talking about is how about this Donald Trump guy? Do you think he will get elected? Do you think he will get elected? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's a joke? What's going on here? And eventually he was elected as the president of the United States. And then people were debating that. And that just seemed to be a topic that could transcend any society, any country, any culture, any religion, no matter where I went, that seemed to be a topic. Another topic that people, they were very, very interested in was Game of Thrones. What about the next episode of Game of Thrones? Did you see the last episode of Game of Thrones? What do you think is going to happen? Did you hear who just died? And so on, so on, so on. And again, that just transcended society globally as far as I'm concerned. People around the world, they like barbecues, they like food, they try to get their educations, they try to keep their jobs, they try to do their best, they get stuck in traffic, they like dancing, they fall in love, they get married. I mean, all around the world, people are just people. And the love of a mother to her child is no different across any border across the world, as far as I'm concerned. I've made so many friends around the world. I've been shown so much kindness that I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay any of it. People, they've been pointing me in the right direction. People have been helping me with translations. People have been making connections for me. People have been giving me accommodation. People have been feeding me. People are truly helpful and amazing if you approach them in the right way. Obviously, you cannot come charging, talking about politics and religion. I think the best way to go forward is to be kind and where it's appropriate, look people in the eyes and smile, try to remember people's names, and generally just be open-minded and accept that everything is not exactly how they are back in your home country, in the remaining countries around the world. Your country is essentially just 0.5% of the world's countries around the world, making 99.5% of the world's countries a foreign country. So traveling out into the world, having an open mind, that's the way that I've been doing it. And here I am, I'm still alive, haven't been kidnapped, haven't been jailed, no one's killed me so far, and still smiling. The project motto of Once Upon a Saga is, a stranger is a friend you've never met before. And that is something that I truly, truly believe in. And to illustrate that, I'm going to take you to another photo. And let's see if you can see what it is while I tell the story. Oops, where did that go? Give me a second to find that photo again. It seems to have disappeared. But in any case, I can start telling the story. So early within Once Upon a Saga, I reached Poland. And Poland happened to be in December 2013. And it was very, very, very cold. And I was on my way to Lithuania. And while on my way to Lithuania, I was going to make a stop in a small place called Suwałki. Now, Suwałki is a bit of a joke within Poland. Polish people say Suwałki is the coldest place in all of Poland. And let's see if I can get the photo for you now. There we go. There it is. And I was looking online to see if I could find a place to stay, and nothing popped up on the internet. And I was staying at a hostel in Warsaw, and the people working there, they said, we can help you out. And they searched online in Polish, and they made a few calls, and they came back to me and said, here you have a phone number and an address, and there's a guy, he's willing to host you. He did not sound very friendly on the phone, but you're only spending one night and you should be okay, and you have to pay him in cash, and here's the amount that you need to pay. And I said, thank you very much. And I got on the train and I left towards Suwałki. And I did the mistake of not searching for where the address was within Suwałki. And when I arrived, I didn't know which direction to go, but I figured I'll just ask somebody local and they'll be able to help me. And once the train arrived, it was winter, it was dark, it was late in the evening, and maybe 4 or 5 people got off the train, and the train continued. And like this, people disappeared. And I was all alone at the train station, and I didn't have a chance to talk to anyone. Nothing was open. I didn't see anyone anywhere. And I was trying to work out, where should I go? And normally when you get to a new city, there's an indication of where the city center might be. There are some taller buildings, maybe a church tower, maybe more traffic. But in this case, everything just looked completely dead. There was quite a lot of snow, no leaves on the trees, and it was cold. It was a little bit windy. No cars were moving in any direction. It was just me, my hat, and my backpack. So I decided I'm going to walk this way. I'll walk for 15 minutes. Surely I'll come across someone, I'll meet someone, and something's going to work out. And I walked for about 15 minutes, and I got to a neighborhood with a few houses, and there were some parked cars outside. And within those 15 minutes, I had not seen anybody whatsoever. No cars driving, no people out on the streets, no one walking their dogs, nothing. Just me, the snow, the landscape, and the urban environment. And then as I was standing there thinking, it was almost 11 p.m. in the evening, and I was thinking, well, I can't be too far away from this address that I'm going to. I wonder, will I find it within the next 5 to 10 minutes or within the next couple of hours? And then suddenly a door opened from a house just down the street. And there was a woman who came out, and light was emerging from behind this woman. And I figured, that's my chance. And I ran towards this woman and said hello. And she was looking at me, and she said hello. And I say, excuse me, do you think you can, oh, I'm sorry, do you speak English? And she smiled and said, yes, I speak English. I'm an English teacher. I thought that was very, very lucky. And then I said, do you think you can help me find this address? And she took a look at the paper, and she said, yes, I know where this is, but wouldn't you much rather just stay in my home? And I was a little bit surprised by that reaction. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about this woman. She might bring me into a back room or into the basement, and no one will ever see me again. Can I trust her? Can I not trust her? So I smiled and said, no, this man, he's expecting me. There's an agreement with him. I better get over there. So can you just tell me the direction? And this woman said, no, don't be silly. We can call the man and tell him that you're not coming. I'm a member of a guest club, a travelers club, and you can come inside and you can stay here. It's not a problem at all. And then for a second, I thought about it and decided, well, I'm going to, this was early 2000, this was early in the project. This was December 2013. So I'd just been traveling for a month and a half, maybe. And I decided, well, I'm going to go across all of these countries. I'm going to be meeting all of these people around the world. I should be more trustful. She seems like a nice lady. I should accept some of these invitations and just see where they lead. So I said, thank you very much. And I followed her inside. And then actually what she wanted to do was she wanted to come out and move her car because a storm was blowing in over from Europe. And she was afraid that some of the trees would fall on her car. So she moved her car a little bit, and then we walked inside the house. And then she went into the kitchen while I was taking my backpack off and taking my shoes off. And she calls and she says, have you had anything to eat? Are you hungry? And it's almost midnight, and I lie and I say, no, I'm not hungry, thank you very much. And my stomach is going, rah, 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 rah. And she smiles and looks at me and says, oh, I'll cook something for you. And she starts heating up some stuff and she's cooking for me. And I come into the kitchen and I say, well, so sorry, by the way, my name is Thor and I'm from Denmark. And she looks at me and says, oh, hello, my name is Maria. And she finishes cooking and she puts it on the table and we sit there and I have something to eat and we talk for a bit. And then eventually her daughter comes down from upstairs and she has a look at us sitting there around midnight in their home. And I do not speak Polish, but I'm fairly sure that the conversation went something like this. So the daughter looks at her mother and shouts, "Mother, what the heck are you thinking? You cannot just invite strange men in from the street. We cannot defend ourselves. We don't know who this guy is," and stuff like this. But the daughter, who was a lawyer, she also spoke English, and we managed to calm her down. And then after a while, she went back up to sleep. And then Maria, she guided me down into the basement, actually. And then within the basement, there was a guest bed, and she made the bed for me, and she said, have a good night's sleep. And then the next morning I woke up, and they made coffee for me and breakfast for me, and they gave me a towel, and I had a shower. And then Maria said, I'll drive you to the bus. And she took me outside and wiped the snow off the car. And we got into the car and we went to the bus station. And she pointed at a bus and said, that one there is the bus that's going to take you to Lithuania. Have a nice journey, take good care. And then she drove off again. So for me, that is the absolute concept of a stranger is a friend you've never met before. But it's also a story about coincidence. Because back at the train station, when I didn't know which way to go, I decided to go this way. But I could have gone that way, in which case I would maybe never have met Maria. Or Maria could have decided to come out and move her car 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, in which case I might never have met Maria. But in this case, everything worked out. I met her, and then an artist from Norway, he heard about the story, and he made this drawing, which is on the screen right now. And I thought it was very nice. And then I got in touch with Maria's daughter. And through her, I got in touch with Maria, and I sent her this image, and she was very, very happy, and we're still in touch today. So that was the very beginning of Once Upon a Saga, and I think that was a very, very important happening. I think because of that, I am now the kind of person that if I arrive at a dark night and someone is asking me for help, then I will offer it. Because to be honest, I think if this would have happened to me in Denmark years ago, then I would have been kind enough to say, yes, I know where the address is, and then pointed someone in the right direction. Or in the case where I had a car, I'd say, you know what, get in the car, I'll drive you there. But I probably wouldn't have brought anyone into my home. And I might have changed my mind about that today. Okay. So quickly going back to the world map. That was in Poland. Then I got through the Nordic countries and started going over the North Atlantic. Eventually, I was on a fishing trawler going from Iceland towards Greenland. We got stuck in the ice several times, but eventually we made it down. We got to Qaqortoq, which is in the very south of Greenland, and then we made it up to Nuuk. And then I needed to make it from my way from Nuuk to Canada. And it was so late in the year that it was almost impossible. So the best solution was actually to get on a ship, come back to Iceland. It took me about 2 months to find the ship that was going in that direction. And then eventually getting on a container ship from Iceland, and we were heading towards Canada, and we got caught in a storm. And I was still very, very green within being on board ships, certainly being on board container ships. And this ship was moving all over the place. And I was scared to death. So this is a photo from being on board that ship. I'd have to say, I wasn't taking any photos, I wasn't taking any video when it was really, really rough. I got a few snaps when I could actually stand on my feet and I felt that I was more or less under control. But this was a very, very scary environment. The ship was hammering from one side to the other. Waves were crashing in over the container. Thunder and lightning. One of the crew members told me that we weren't very far from where the Titanic sank, which then also got into my head. This particular ship was a very, very good ship. However, it was not ice class. And we were sailing in the wintertime, and we had reports that there were some icebergs floating around in the area. So for me, this was a very dangerous situation. I thought there was a high risk that we would be sinking, we would be going down. And I went up on the bridge, and usually on the bridge, you'll have 1 or 2 guys up on the bridge steering the ship. In this case, there were 6 or 7 people up there, lots of officers and some crew members. And they were talking, all of them were very calm, they were handling it. The ship was going from one side to the other. I was holding on to all sorts of stuff so I wouldn't fall on my feet. And then when it was quiet for a moment, I asked one of the officers, is this normal? And then 2 of the officers turned around, looked at me and started laughing. And while they were laughing, one of them said, "Don't worry, son, this is nothing. We can handle much, much worse than this. Everything's going to be okay. Just make sure you do not fall off the ship and you're going to be fine." So with their confidence, I felt confident. I went down to get something to eat. It was a mess. I was running around, I got a plate, and I was running from one side to the other as the ship was going. I was trying to get food on my plate, and eventually I sat down, I put the plate on the table, and then I hold onto the plate with one hand because or else it will fly into the wall. And at the same time, I'm holding on to the table because if I did not hold on to the table, then my chair would flip over on one side. And then I had to work out how to eat this meal because I sort of ran out of hands really, really quickly. Eventually, I got back up to my cabin. I decided that I wanted a shower, and I go inside the shower cubicle, and I'm holding onto the sides as it's moving, and I turn on the water, and the water comes down, and it goes one side, and then the water goes the other side. And eventually, I get some water on me, and it's difficult with the soap and all of this. But I have a shower. I try to get some sleep. Every time, it felt like every time I eventually fell asleep, I would wake up on the floor and then get back into sleep, back into bed, and then wake up on the floor. And this would go on throughout the entire night. And you can imagine going to the toilet was a really big adventure as well. So this storm lasted for 4 days. And at the end of the 4 days, the water was calm and smooth as if it was deep blue oil. It was simply amazing. I've never seen the ocean like that, neither before or after. And every little ripple in the surface of the ocean meant that there was life. So we saw plenty of whales and dolphins. And when nightfall came, we had northern lights coming across. And it was just absolutely amazing. And then about 4 hours before we could see land, 4 hours before we saw Canada, suddenly there was this amazing sensation of standing in the middle of a forest. You could smell trees as powerful as if you were in the middle of the forest. And you look around and you see nothing around you. And then 4 hours later, we could see land. So what happened was the wind was heading out in our direction and it was blowing pollen out to sea across the treetops. So I could actually smell Canada long before I could see Canada. And that was new for me, right? So if we go back to the map again for a second, I have a lot of stories for you from around the world. And I would love to share all of them, but we are a little bit pressed on time. But as I made it into Africa, I had a lot of easy countries, and I had a few very complex, very difficult countries. And eventually I was in Central Africa, and that became my nemesis, and I almost gave up on this project while there. I had been recovering from cerebral malaria. I lost my financial backing for the project. My grandmother died. My long distance relationship to my fiance was really, really shaky. It was very, very difficult to manage this project of going around the world without flying, and for her to manage her life back at home while managing a long distance relationship. So it was really, really shaky, and I was getting very, very thin. I started getting migraines. I simply couldn't get the documentation that I needed. I couldn't cross the borders, couldn't get the visas. I couldn't find the ships to go out to. There are a couple of island nations out here, just west of Gabon. And on top of that, I was the subject of extreme racism. Racism in many different forms. Now, it's very important for me to say that people in this part of the world are kind and friendly and funny, lots of laughs, and the nature is beautiful, and the flora and the fauna and the food, and it's such an astonishing part of this planet. Yet it's a highly corrupted, very, very complex and very difficult part of our world, Central Africa. And anyone who puts on a uniform just seemed to be the devil. And I struggled greatly. And a region which was set to take maybe 7 or 8 weeks ended up taking 6 to 7 months to go through. And I came very, very close. I'd say mentally I gave up on the project. I was on my way home, but very fortunately, this motorcycle taxi driver, he showed up, Abdul Karim. He'd been helping me around the border area in southern Cameroon a few times. And he saw that I was down. And we didn't speak the same language, but he showed up with his helmet and his motorcycle. And he smiled at me and he indicated I should get on the motorcycle. And he brought me over to a small place where we had some tea and we sat. And he cheered me up. We did not share a common language, but he found a way to cheer me up. And within 10 minutes, I changed my mindset from giving up to fighting even harder. And it really just got a lot worse after that. I have a lot of beautiful stories from Central Africa. I have a few hard stories as well. And then I have this story, which is sort of something in between. So I eventually made it to Brazzaville in Congo. There are 2 countries called Congo. There's the Democratic Republic of Congo, and then there's the smaller Congo, the Republic of Congo. And I was in Brazzaville, and I needed to make my way back up to Gabon. So I was going to retrace some of my steps heading north up the west coast of Africa again. And the day I chose to leave Brazzaville just happened to be the day where they had a referendum. And the population was panicking a little bit. And they thought that there was a risk that war would break out and that people would start shooting in the streets and there would be a lot of violence. So a lot of people were trying to flee the capital city. And usually they have these modern trains from Port Noir to Brazzaville. There's this beautiful train on par with the most modern trains we have in Denmark. And I rode that train coming to Brazzaville, but unfortunately, it's completely booked. All the buses were booked. The first class buses with Wi-Fi and television and meals and air conditioning, they were booked out, but I usually don't take those with my budget. The chicken buses, they were booked. The taxis were gone. All forms of transportation were gone. And I met this one woman, and she said that, don't worry, they're going to roll the trucks out. In situations like this, the trucks come out and they help with transportation. And she told me she was going to fly, but the flights were also booked out. There was no way of moving out of there. And then we negotiated a price to get on top of this truck. And we were about 60 people on top of this truck. And I sat up towards the front, and people on the side of the street were pointing and laughing at me, being the only Northern European person on top of this truck. And people were shouting, Jesus, Jesus, Yesu, Yesu, Yesu at me. Because at the time I had long hair and a beard as well. And it was a lot of fun for the first 15 or 20 minutes. And then we eventually got out on these dirt roads. And it looks quite nice right here in this photo, but we got out on some rough roads and it was very, very dusty. As you can see in the photo, a lot of people completely covered in dust. This was a ride that took 2 days. And you could probably do it in 4 or 5 hours in a taxi, but it took us 2 days. So on the first night, or the first evening, we were all quite miserable. We were miserable because of the dust. We were miserable because of the noise. We were miserable because of the movement of the truck going all around the place. It was very, very uncomfortable. Most people were simply standing up. They weren't even sitting down. They're just standing up on the back of the truck. The front end of the truck is full of cargo, and some of us were lucky to sit on top of that. The rest were just standing up in the back. In this particular photo is a checkpoint, and there are many, many checkpoints, and everybody needs to get off, and we show our documents, and then we get back on the truck again. But on the first day, we were heading out on this dirt road. It was very dusty. It was very, very miserable. The sun was about to set, and then suddenly this woman, she takes a water bottle, and she starts beating this water bottle. And then she starts singing. And she's the only one singing for a very, very long time. maybe after 10 minutes, there's another woman who chimes in and starts singing. And then another one, and then a couple of men. And then within no time, everybody on that bus was singing beautiful song. The sun was setting. We were out in this spectacular nature. We were covered in dust. We were sitting on top of a truck. The music, the sunset, it was grand. It was simply an amazing experience, which is very hard to recreate. Maybe perhaps a once in a lifetime experience for me. And after 15, 20 minutes of singing, they stopped singing, the sun set, and then we were all back to being miserable until the point where the truck stopped. We put out some tarpaulin and we were lying down, sleeping in a small village for the night in order to avoid bandits further down the road. Right. Well, as I told you, I have many, many stories I'd like to share with you, and I will not be able to share all of them. I am now in Hong Kong. I've been in Hong Kong for a long time. I do tons and tons of hiking here in Hong Kong. You'll see me up on the mountains. You'll see me out on the trails. I do some collaborations with companies. I do speaking engagements with schools and organizations where I can. I try to keep social media updated. I try to keep high spirits. It's a rough time. COVID-19 is not easy for any of us. I've been wanting to go home since 2015, but here we still are today. I truly love Hong Kong. I think Hong Kong is amazing, and I think I was very, very lucky to get stuck in Hong Kong. If we take a quick look at the remaining 9 countries within this project, then you'll see that those are all island nations. So here we are up in Hong Kong right now. I was on my way to Palau. I have a few smaller island nations out here. I still have New Zealand, Australia, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. Chances were that I would have been stuck on board a ship or on a tiny island somewhere in the Pacific. So I was quite fortunate that I made it to Hong Kong and got stuck in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is full of opportunities. There are 7.5 million people here. A country like Palau has maybe 20,000 people. I'm sure Palau is beautiful and nice, but I've been in Hong Kong for close to 10 months now. I'm not sure that Palau is that nice. So quite lucky where I got stuck. All of these remaining countries are closed right now. Nobody in, nobody out, as the current situation is. And my final image is just a shout out because I am from Denmark. So I had a new uniform done while here in Hong Kong, and I put the Danish flag on my arm. But I also want to say hello and thank you to the financial sponsors within Once Upon a Saga. They do not sponsor the entire budget of the project, but they do sponsor a big part of it. It's Ross DK and GEOP, and those are geothermal companies, and they're trying to build sustainable energy through geothermal energy. So those were my photos. That was my story, and I think that was 45 minutes for you.
That, Thor, was exactly 45 minutes. You're a very timely guy.
Thank you.
So thank you for a wonderful talk, and we have lots of questions coming in, and anyone who wants to add their question, please type them into the Q&A box. So the first question, which I imagine is on most people's mind, is did you plan the route in advance, or did you opportunistically sort of go ahead at each spot?
Okay, well, that is a good question. I come from a background within shipping and logistics. I've worked 12 years within the field of shipping and logistics. Logistics is very close to my heart. I have the world map here behind me, and I planned it all out in advance. I sat down with a world map and a red pen and a blue pen, and my sister was listing countries, and I was trying to work out the optimal route to go. I've had to deviate a few times, but I'd say maybe 90% of the original plan, I've been able to stick to that. And especially with the Pacific, it's all up in the air right now. I don't know which order the countries will be opening up in.
Got it. So someone writes in that Graham Hughes set the world Guinness record for fastest time to visit every country. You're nodding. I guess you know who he is.
Yes.
So did you start off trying to beat his record?
No, so Graham is phenomenal. Graham is truly an amazing adventurer, and he had a project called the Odyssey Expedition, which he completed after 4 years and 31 days. And it was an amazing project, and he is in the Guinness World Record for a couple of records, the highest amount of countries visited within a year, and also the fastest surface journey to every country in the world. There's a distinction between his project and mine. Graham, he allowed himself to fly whenever he wanted to, basically, as long as he would come back to the same location. Graham did not need to bother with visas for all countries, as he had a separate rule. He had a rule which was set foot on dry land. If you set foot on dry land, then that counts as a visit, and this is according to Guinness World Records. Everything is fine, but that also meant that he did not need to apply for all the visas. If he had a difficult country and he wasn't going in that direction, he could go up to the border and maybe talk to immigration and say, can I just go and stand there for 10 seconds? And then that was fine. He'd come back out again. So he broke his project into bits and pieces by going on holiday with his girlfriend in Australia, flying home a few times, and for some family emergencies, I believe he might also have applied for a couple of visas while he was back home. Where my journey is, it's every country. There is absolutely no flying. I haven't been back home. It's a single journey, and it has to be more than 24 hours in every country, meaning that I have to apply for the visas that I need. So there's some distinction there. It sounds similar sometimes, because he will say that he went to every country without flying, and then I will say, well, I went to every country completely without flying. So that's sort of where the battle is.
I see. Okay, and do you recommend other people try your journey, or was
No.
once enough?
No, listen. Traveling is a wonderful thing. I recommend everybody to get out there. Everyone should travel as much as they possibly can. To go out and do it in one set and say, I'm not coming home until it's done is madness. And traveling is something you should look forward to. It's something you should enjoy while it's going on. And I think for the most part, people, they're able to enjoy that for a couple of weeks or a month of vacation. Some people go backpacking or have a gap year, 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years. You rarely find anyone who's been going for more than 1.5 years and still enjoys it. It needs to be given some sort of purpose. This is a project. So I'd say, well, there are definitely three types of travel. There's traveling for work, where you end up in a conference room and a hotel and an airport and this kind of stuff, and you're paid for it. Then there's your holiday. You pick a destination, you go, you shut off your phone, maybe, and you have a nice time. And then there's project-related travel. So if you're going across Antarctica, or you want to go on top of Mount Everest, or if you're crossing a continent on a bicycle or something like this, or if you're going to every country without flying. And this is a lot more work than I anticipated. It's a lot less enjoyable, although I am smiling and I'm, here I am. If I could go back in a time machine, I would tell myself not to do it, but I'm too close to the end of this now.
Okay.
So now we're going to get it done.
Okay. So that leads to the next question, right, which is, are you going to be officially finished when you hit the last country, or when you step foot back in Denmark?
See, that's a very, very good question as well.
Well, there's a reason behind the question, because this person wants to be there for the party.
Okay. Well, within the planning, it seems that the Maldives is going to be the final country of this project. And the Maldives is so far away from Hong Kong, it's probably still going to be the final country. It makes sense to hit the Maldives on my way back up to Denmark. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of like a different answer within the question. Maldives, probably the final country. There will be some sort of party in the Maldives. However, I see the project as completed when I get back home. And it's a little bit tricky, this. So if I want to say I went to every country without flying, then I also have to go to Denmark without flying. And I went from Denmark without flying. I never went to Denmark without flying. So I would have to close the circle by returning home as well without flying. And that's how I see the project would be completed.
Okay, so you're going to have to give us about a month's notice so we can post it on the RGS website so that anyone who wants to be there when you land in Denmark can be there.
Sure thing.
On a more whimsical question, how many hats have you been through?
2. This is my hat number 2, and it's such a shame. I had this, I had a very similar hat. If you go and look at pictures I posted years ago, you'll still see me with a hat and you might not see a big difference. But that was a hat I had for 10 years prior to the project. That was a hat that I brought on motorcycle journeys. The first time I visited China, I went on the Great Wall, I wore that hat. I went on top of Kilimanjaro wearing that hat. It had bite marks from chimpanzees. That was my travel hat. And I brought it to go to every country in the world. And I reached 101 countries, woke up in the morning and the hat was gone. And it's a mystery to this day. I was being hosted. I was inside a gated community. I had a guest room. I really don't know what happened to that hat, but it's gone. It never showed up again. It felt like losing, perhaps not a child, but at least a pet or something like this. And it took a while for me before I was able to get a new hat. I traveled through various countries. I couldn't find anything I was happy about. So eventually in Zimbabwe, my fiance, she flew in. My sister, she'd gone to the same hat store where I got the original hat 17 years ago and got this hat for me. My father, he paid for it and signed his name inside, and my fiance put it on my head.
What a great story. How much gear do you have with you as you travel? It sounds like you're traveling rather light.
Yeah, sort of. A lot of people, they will look at what I have and go like, are you crazy? You can't travel around with that much. But then that's everything I have for the entirety of the journey. So I need that when I'm in Arctic conditions and when I'm around the equator. And so there's a variety of things. Plus, I want to look nice and presentable, so I carry a lot of clothes and so on. I have a duffel bag, which is about yay big. It's a rounded duffel bag, and I can open it up. It's just one room, and I put everything inside. It's called a base camp duffel bag. And then I have a backpack, which I'll typically bring inside the bus or inside the train or inside the taxi or whatever. And then the duffel bag goes on the roof or underneath and so on.
Was there anything that truly shocked you, better or worse, right?
To say that something has shocked me, I don't know if it's been that dramatic, but I have been surprised about a few things. I've truly been surprised about the amount of hospitality which is found in countries which we speak ill about. So those countries that are typically in the evening news for armed conflict, when you make it inside those countries, the hospitality is unparalleled. It's people are so happy to see foreigners that are not there for purposes of work, people that they view as tourists, and they truly want to show the best of their country, be that food or a special rock that's around the corner or a monument or something else. And you know, around the world, people are still taking selfies and updating and this, and people want to take selfies with you, and the kindness. You have to remember, when the bombs are dropping down in some unfortunate country, people are still falling in love. People are still getting married. There are still weddings. And I don't think I saw that when I left home. I think I had to experience that throughout this journey, that when the evening news is documenting the hardship of this planet, they're showing us reality. But something is going on behind the camera as well. And sometimes that one thing that's going on behind the camera is the taxis are still going, that vegetable markets and fruit markets are open. People are going to school. People are still trying to keep their jobs. There are parts of the world where it's just mayhem and it's very much destruction, but there's still humanity everywhere on this planet.
What was the most delicious thing you've eaten in your travels, and what was the most gross thing you've eaten in your travels?
I became very, very fond of laksa. I had laksa for the first time when I got to Singapore, actually. I didn't have it in Malaysia, but I had it in Singapore, and it just struck a chord with it. I was just, wow, what is this? I love my laksa. And I've been able to find some good laksa in Hong Kong as well. So that's the good thing about being in Hong Kong. But when I think about good food, I typically think about Italian food. I think not just the pasta and the pizzas, but also the meat dishes and the fish. And I really, really love Italian food. I think they got it right. And then in Central Africa, they have these, I can't remember the type of fish, but it's a very common fish on the coastal cities. And you have these big mamas out on the street lined up with their barbecues, and they'll barbecue this fish and they'll serve it with manioc, which is cut into small pieces, and some special sauce and maybe some vegetables, and you eat it with your hands. And I miss that, and I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to have that again unless I travel back to that region. That is such a delicious dish. Oh, I'm sorry, and then something gross. Well, I had goat's brain in Nigeria while these other guys were eating a kebab. I think they just ordered it so that I could try it, you know? And I've had some insects which were delicious, and I've had some insects which were not delicious at all. I've had snake once in a while, which was full of bones, and I didn't enjoy it. And I had wonderful snake, and I've had cow skin, which didn't serve any purpose eating it at all. And again, they were laughing at me, just get the foreigner to eat it.
So I noted that you haven't yet made it to Australia. So
Right.
once you go there, you'll have to try Vegemite and tell us whether that gets added to the top or the bottom of your list.
I have met Australians around the world. And there's a small distinction as well. I have been to Australia within my life. I have not been to Australia within this project without flying. So I've been to Australia maybe 5 or 6 times. I love Vegemite, but it has to be served in the right way. So I want it on a piece of bread with butter and then the Vegemite, not just the Vegemite.
Okay, so you're a Vegemite connoisseur.
Yeah.
So will Denmark be home again? Or after 7 years, will you end up going back someplace else?
Oh, you know, I could settle in a great deal of countries around the world. There are many places where I feel home, and I've had a real passion for being there, and there are many things I want to see. But I am Danish, and that's my language, and that's my culture, and that's my childhood, and that's where my friends are. And my fiance and I, we were supposed to get married earlier this year, but that didn't go the way we wanted due to the virus. But we will eventually get married, and she's anchored to Denmark. I don't see her as the kind of person who would go and uproot herself, certainly not for 10 years, a couple of years at most. So Denmark will be my home, and I'll be able to re-explore the world from Denmark.
Great. Well, Thor, thank you very much for a very informative and entertaining task. As a gift, we would like to give you Island at the Edge of the World about South Georgia. I assume one of the places you've been. And so let me pass that to you here so you can pick that up for me.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Enjoy it very much. Now, if you will click on the participant tab on your screen, and if the participants will do likewise, you can see where you can raise and lower your hand. That is a way of us giving you virtual applause for this talk. So you can see you can raise and lower your hand, and you can see there are many hands going up and down now, showing the appreciation of our members. And thank you very much for a wonderful talk. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your time in Hong Kong and soon get to move on to Palau. Thank you very much. And to all our members and guests, have a good evening. And we look forward to seeing you at our future events in the next few days. Bye-bye.
Thank you.